go home. Good, 59. Hey YouTube, this is Rosewood59 here. Today I'm going to show you guys how to make a bamboo cutting board. Alright, your first step on making your cutting board is to get some bamboo. I got mine at Home Depot. They are kind of expensive, but you can always wait for a sale or something like that. I know bamboo isn't cheap, and it's just solid bamboo. That's all I got for your flooring, and that's all you need. And basically what you're going to do is your first step is kind of determine what size you want your cutting board to be. I kind of just grabbed one out of the cupboard and was like, hey, I like that size, so I'm going to go with that size. So that's kind of what I did to base it off. But I'll go through all the measurements and everything that I did. So basically what you want to do is take it to the table saw, and basically you'll see there's two sides. You've got your tongue, and you've got your tongue here, and you've got your groove over here. And basically the idea is if you're doing it for a floor, it goes tongue and groove joints all the way down, so it's nice and strong. But we got to remove that to re-glue it. So basically your groove part, how it's nice and has a groove basically down the middle, that's nice and square. So we want that side against your table saw. And basically what you want to do is on your joint side, what you want to do is you want to cut it completely off so you get it nice and square. So you basically get something that looks like this. I know you guys can see the difference here. But that's pretty much the difference where you get just nice and square. You just want to take that edge off so you don't have that groove anymore. And basically once you're done that, then all you want to do is take to your other side, that's nice and square now, and you want to put that side against the fence, and you want to remove the other side, and I basically just cut my strips down to 3 inches in width. So when you have a finished product, this is a short piece I have here, but it's in 3 inches in width. It's nice and square on both sides. And basically then the next step is cutting it to lengthwise. And I ended up going with 14.5. I know one of my cutting boards was a little bit smaller, but I wanted to make mine just a little bit longer. So I ended up just cutting it to 14.5 inches long. And once you squared everything up and cut it to 14.5 inches long by 3 inches wide. Alright, so your next step is gluing. And it's a couple things to prepare yourself before you go ahead and glue. The first thing is I put down some painter's tape on my clamps. One, it helps from keeping the clamp lasting longer, because I know when I've done it before, it does stick really well, not just with bamboo, but if you're doing other types of wood like maple or something like that. Sometimes with the reaction with the glue in the wood, it stains it a bit and gets really hard, and then you get all these, when glue dries, it dries hard as a rock. And to get it off is pretty much impossible. So the painter's tape gives it a nice, it doesn't wreck your clamps, and the glue will still stick to it, and then when you're done, you just peel everything right off and it comes off perfectly. The next thing what you want to do is you want to lay out your area. So now that I've got all my pieces cut to the length that I want, you want to kind of just check your edges, make sure if there's any edges that you're not happy with to what position. Like for instance, this bamboo here, I don't know if you can see it, this one here happened to have just a little crack down here. So obviously I want that in my middle. I don't want that on my end or anything like that, because that will show in the end. So this time I'm going to just put it right in the middle. So you always do a test part. I already tested my pieces to make sure they fit in properly. I left enough room for my clamps. The next thing is you want a little bit of wax paper underneath, because when your glue drips down, you want it to drip down on something so that's easy to clean up and not so messy. And the type of glue I'm going to use today is this glue right here, if you guys can see it here. I think you call it Tybond 3, I believe it is. It's waterproof, and the best thing about this also, not just waterproof, it's food safe. It's very important because we are making a cutting board, so don't want to poison anybody or anything like that. So just check out what type of glue you're using and everything like that when you're making a cutting board and everything like that. So that's the glue I'm using. I just put it in a smaller bottle. and I just label it with my label maker. It's a lot easier that way. I just bought this bottle at the dollar store. You can also put your favorite sauces or anything like that, but I use it for glue because it comes out nice and a nice perfect bead. It doesn't get all clumped up and dried up. It's really great. So basically now what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and flip up and just put a bead of glue on here. And basically I've always done what my teachers have always told me in the past, is you just do it like if you're making a sandwich and you like your mayonnaise. If you don't, that's okay. But it's just more of a metaphor that just want to put enough if you were to have it on a piece of toast or something like that. You just want to make sure you cover it nice and good. And also the thing with this glue is it gives you 10 minutes before it sets, which is great because I know sometimes when I've had longer pieces, I'm trying to glue up something, sometimes some of the other glues only give you a 5-minute time. So you just want to nicely coat it. Just make sure you get every piece. And that's why I said don't worry if you get beads of glue everywhere, because that's the whole point, is you want just a nice bead glue. Now this one here that has a little bit of holes in it, I'm just going to put a little extra glue into it just because we want that piece, not all the other glues to, the other glue just to soak in there. And if you have excess, that's okay. Just go ahead and scoop it up and put it on your next piece. I'm not too worried about this point. I know sometimes they've come out with stuff that you can use brushes and stuff like that, but I just use my fingers because I don't want to make sometimes my brushes dirty and sometimes it's more throwaway and stuff, and I don't like that. So I just use like good old fingers. And remember what sides you're gluing up to when you're doing this too, because you gotta remember too is that you don't want to put glue on this side if you're putting it down here, because it's going to stick to your clamps. Now usually you do a triangle or label 1, 2, 3, 4 on your pieces of wood, but because it's bamboo and it's already got a finish on top, in my case it's very hard to see the marks of my pencil and stuff like that. So, and this one here, I just kind of just stick it up just a little bit. I know I've already got glue kind of on the one side. And just go ahead. And I just also make sure I have a paper towel nearby, so when I'm all done this, I can clean my hands right away before I make everything messy as well. So close that up. And now what you want to do is just kind of level it off. I kind of like to make sure one side of my end is as close as possible as I can get. And then just bring it in just a little bit. And basically what you want to do is you want to have a clamp that's kind of a little bit near your ends. Not so much. Now this is the important thing. You don't want to over tighten this. You just want to check your edges and make sure they are flat. That is the most important thing, because the flatter you can get it, the easier it will be to put it through the planer. Oops. And if you happen to have some sticks, it's okay. Just hammer it down with a this one here just wants to pop up a little bit. This is just a little bit time, but the more time you spend making it flat, it'll be less work for you to try to plane it and try to make sure everything is level off. So I'm just going to go ahead, clamp everything up. Alright, so now that I got it all nice and tightly clamped up, you can see there's a lot of glue on here. What you can do is, because it already has a finish on it, you can just grab some paper towel and a spray bottle and just spray just to dampen a bit to wipe off the glue. Or you can wait about 30 minutes, come back and just scrape it off with a putty knife. And the reason for that is because once it gets a little bit hard, it just peels right off pretty much. The better, the most glue you can get off now is better, because remember, when you're putting it through your planer, it does wreck your planer blades, because glue dries very, very hard, like I was saying before, so it will nick your planer blades or anything like that, and you don't want to do that. So I'm just going to take the water bottle in a paper towel, just kind of spray it and just neaten it up. And the bottom, I'm just gonna let dry for about 30 minutes. You can see all that nice glue beading out. That's kind of what you want. Just gonna let that dry for about 30 minutes and come back and just scrape it off. And just keep in the clamps for overnight or about for 2 hours or so if you didn't have enough clamps, and you can come back to it later and it'll be fine. Alright, now that I've taken out the clamps and I let it dry completely overnight to make sure all the glue is nice and dry, I'm going to be taking it to the planer. And once you've taken it to the planer, you just want to get rid of the complete finish that's on here so that the wood looks something like this color on the top. And you want to plane down, I usually like to plane down this side first just to get rid of all this side. So I end up with a nice smooth surface, and I flip it over, plane it through this side, get nice and smooth. And my final thickness that I want to get to is 1/2 inch. So I'm not really planing off a whole lot. I don't know what the measurement of this material is, but I know from a test piece that I did, I didn't have to put it, I think pretty much 3 or 4 passes, very little, just to make it nice and clean and nice and smooth on both sides to get to 1/2 inch. Alright, so after I took it to the planer, your next step is to cut the edges. As you can see here, you got your uneven edges from gluing. So now that's smooth on both sides, you want to take it to a radial arm saw, that's what I have, and you're just gonna finish up one side. And that's what I did on the opposite side here, so you guys could see I cut it nice and smooth and everything like that. So now that I got this good edge, I'm going to take my tape measure and measure over 14 3/8, and I'm just going to make a little pencil mark and then take it to my radial arm saw and cut the edge nice and square and smooth, so you get a nice square cutting board. Okay, so now what we want to do is determine our shape, what kind of shape we want our cutting boards to be. And I've got a cutting board, it's just plastic that I found, that we have, and I just like just a little bit of curve. So I just kind of took the cutting board and kind of just made my own radiuses, and then you just go to the bandsaw and you just cut them out. So they'll look kind of something, kind of half rounded, so you kind of got square, but a nice look to it. So what we want to do is make your radiuses, cut them out, jigsaw or bandsaw. I'm going to use a bandsaw. And then I'm just going to go to my sander and just nicely sand all the edges. So that's what we're going to do, is do that to all 4 sides. Alright, so now for routering, what you want to do is you want to use a 1/2 inch round over bit. And because your material is pretty much close to 1/2 inch, what you want to do is you want to router your top all the way around, and then you want to flip it over and then router all the way your bottom as well. Now you will get some router edges, basically a little bit point left, because it is 1/2 inch material, so sometimes you get just a little bit in the middle. But I find it wasn't too bad. I just took 100 grit sandpaper and just really sanded all the way through around all the edges and everything. And then once I did that, I took my sander and I sanded 80 grit on the top and on the bottom. Then I sanded 100 grit top and bottom, and then finished off with 150 grit of sandpaper on the top and bottom to finish it, make it completely nice and smooth. After I dusted all the dust off and everything, I stamped in my name. You can get your own stamp, or you can just leave it blank, whatever you prefer. And after I did that, I basically then used this type of stain. It's a food safe stain, which is very important. It's an oil-based stain. Because this is a cutting board, you want to make sure it's food safe. Just phone your company. There's a 1-800 number on the back. I phoned the company just to make sure it doesn't have any nut process or anything used, because I'm using it with food, and I want to make sure that if I did make something and somebody was over that they had a nut allergy, I want to make sure of that. But just call the 1-800 number and just make sure, or ask for their safety data sheet, and should have all the material that they used to build in it, just to make sure. And that's pretty much it. And it takes, I did 2 coats on top and bottom, both sides I did. It takes about 6 hours to let completely dry and then do another coat, and then it takes 72 hours before you can use it. So I think it's been about 3 days or so I've just left it dry, but it sure is nice and smooth and it's a nice bamboo looking cutting board. You kind of can see here in the light the reflection of the nice reflection of it has. It's nice and smooth and it's ready to be used. So hope you guys enjoy this tutorial.